magic and miracles.
An incredible story. In ancient times, the power to heal the sick was often considered a God-given gift. And in some cultures, those who could restore health were believed to be gods themselves. With the advent of medicine, much of the mystery of this capability was removed. But not all of it. One of the greatest enigmas in the annals of medical history involves a young girl who had the miraculous ability to cure the afflicted simply by touching them. But the irony of her story is that though she could restore others to health, she had no power to heal her own diseased body.
Most nights, we would hear voices when she was in her bed. And we'd creep down the passage, everything stopped. What was said, we don't know. I mean, naturally, all we heard was her voice. And then she'd say, "My Jesus Christ came." She told me on a number of occasions Jesus Christ was behind me, or I'd passed him. I've been very rude, didn't say good evening. We've walked past my Jesus Christ, not said good evening or anything else.
By all accounts, little Linda Martel was an extraordinary child. Though she was born with spina bifida, a disease which disfigured her body and prevented her from walking, Linda achieved mind-boggling feats which to this day draw the curious and the hopeful to her native Guernsey, a quaint island situated in the English Channel. This is where Linda and her family once lived. And it was from this very house that the 5-year-old performed not a few, not dozens, but literally hundreds of miracles.
I first came across Linda and her family in 1960 because I came here to this church. I was told that there was this little girl who lived in the parish and interesting things were happening. So I went along as the parish priest to see what it was all about, and got a nice welcome from the family and went in and saw Linda sitting there, and her mother Eileen and Father Roy explained what was happening, that people were going along and taking their troubles and illnesses to her, and she was in some strange way making them feel better.
What the Reverend soon came to realize was that young Linda could heal the sick with just a touch of her small hand. Linda's mother recalls the day she first suspected there was something special about her daughter.
That happened when my husband came home from work and said he had a migraine and he was going to bed. And Linda said, "Come and see me and I'll make it all better." She just touched his head. He went and lay down. But within half an hour he was back. "I'll have my dinner now," he said, "the headache's gone." No more migraines after that.
The relief of Roy's headache might have been written off as mere coincidence. But soon the Martels began to fathom just how real Linda's gift was. Eventually they discovered that not only could she heal people, she could amazingly diagnose ailments as well.
She would just tell somebody to sit down, and she would tell them exactly where or what was wrong with them. And she just touched them. "You'll be all better now." And that was it. Now, there's one gentleman came in with a heart complaint. We didn't know what it was. But as soon as he walked in the door, she said, "You suffer with your heart."
From a young lad, I suffered a terrific pain or an uncomfortable feeling that when I was sitting down, I kept on having to move from right to left, or when I laid down or tried to relax, the pain is always there. I went to London Chest Hospital, they tried everything.
But when traditional means failed, Mr. O'Toole sought out Linda.
When I went there, I was surprised to see a little child, and as I walked in, she said, "You've come to see Linda, and you have a pain." And she pointed to her own self exactly where my pain was, which I had, I said, for years. So she said, "Can Linda touch it?" Which she did. And from then on, I've never had the pain since.
And there were others who were healed. Enda Meyer recounts how the tiny child cured her mother of a lifelong illness.
Well, she was very, very ill. She used to suffer very bad with asthmatic. She couldn't hardly get up the stairs, and when I was younger, I used to go up into her room, she'd be lying on the floor, gasping for breath, and she'd suffered all her life with it since she was 3. One day she was told about little Linda, because we knew the father well, Roy, and she went down to the bungalow, and Linda touched Mother like that, and she said, "You've got bad chest." She said, "It'll be all better now." Well, funny enough, it was. She didn't have those awful attacks anymore. The strange thing, which Mother would never do, she went shopping in town, on the high street, and we've got a rather large hill from the high street right up. It's a really big hill. And my mother walked up that hill with a basket of shopping, but she never could do that. Never.
But how could such a frail young child have such incredibly powerful abilities? We asked Linda's brothers and sister.
Well, obviously, when Linda was born, her disabilities obviously made her different. You must remember, she spent her first 3 years in hospital. She didn't arrive home till she was over 3 years old.
Mysteries, Magic and Miracles continues after the break.
Too ill to live with her family, Linda was cared for by nurses and nuns at the hospital where she resided. And it was there she learned of Jesus Christ and the woman whom Linda called My Lady.
I think her early upbringing made her a bit of a channel for this purpose. You know, with the upbringing of the nuns and so on, brought her into a religious dimension. And I'm sure that that's the way in which God was able to use her.
Linda always credited Christ as the source of her healing ability.
She always used to say, "It's my Jesus Christ." And like she said, it was Jesus Christ. It's not me, it's Jesus Christ.
Linda's talents also included the uncanny ability to determine if a person was no longer alive just by looking at their image in a photograph.
She could pick out who was dead on picture, on photograph, and tell you what was wrong with someone that was sick.
And after having diagnosed the illness of a person pictured, Linda was actually able to heal them long distance by means of handkerchiefs she had touched.
She'd pass her hand over a handkerchief and say something. But what? It was a foreign language to us. We didn't know what it was. My mother-in-law suggested it was something in Hebrew. But I'd say whether it was or not, I don't know.
The handkerchiefs were sent to whomever asked for them. And when the knowledge of their healing power spread beyond the shores of Guernsey, the Martels were inundated with requests. Roy and Eileen bought handkerchiefs by the dozen and sent them all around the world. Linda, who was never happier than when she was helping others, blossomed, and the Martel household was filled with joy. But sadly, looming just beyond the horizon were dark clouds of sorrow. The Martels never accepted money for Linda's services, but people did give her gifts. Grateful for his healing, Ralph O'Toole presented Linda with a dress.
It was a lovely, you know, special party dress, and her eyes lit up. Then the father said to me, you know, Linda is not a well girl, and he showed me what was wrong with her, and she had something wrong with her spine. And when I seen it, I felt a terrible feeling. I thought, well, what a grown man like myself coming to a little child like this with a pain when this young girl is dying.
Linda herself knew she was going to die long before her parents did. The words she used to predict her death still echo in her mother's ears.
Yes, my Jesus isn't coming anymore. I'm going to see him.
Curiously, as time drew near for Linda to depart this world, she began to gain knowledge about relatives who had long since moved on to the next world.
My father-in-law died in 1953. who had been blind in one eye. Linda wasn't born till 1956. But one day she said, well, my grandpa is fine now, he can see. I said, well, what do you mean he can see? He's got sight, he can use both eyes now. My Jesus Christ has healed him. And I said, she didn't even know, well, she didn't know her grandfather.
Though time was running out, Linda kept up her ministry of healing as her parents held on to the hope that their daughter might somehow receive a miracle of her own.
We did think at one time that she would walk the following year. She started getting pains in her back and her legs. And then she said, well, my Jesus has told me I shall walk next year. Because within 3 months she was dead. The week leading up to it, and she was in quite a bit of pain. I said, well, we'd better get the doctor. She said, there's no need to get the doctor, there's nothing he can do. And when the doctor came, she told him, she said, there's nothing you can do, Dr. Webber. My Jesus will help me. He said, well, in that case, he said, I'll go back home. She continued with his pains, but what can I say?
On the 20th of October 1961, Linda Martel died. She was 5 years and 2 months old. Her father, Roy, followed in 1979, and her elder brother, Peter, passed away in 1995. In recent years, Linda's grave has become a place of reflection and comfort for those in need.
Always that grave has had flowers on it. It's had people put little bits of cloth or mementos on it, and even photographs of someone they've got in the family, perhaps who's ill, and they want to get some help. It is a little bit, in a way, superstitious, but it seems to work for people. And the Martel family, Eileen, will tell you that they've had all these letters from people requesting souvenirs of Linda and prayers on their behalf.
The requests for souvenirs began shortly after Linda's passing.
Somebody asked for a handkerchief that Linda had touched. We said we had none. And he said, well, you've got a piece of her clothing. I mean, we hadn't thought about that. So from then on, we started cutting up the clothing and sending that out to people that required. That's a little piece of it. I always carry a piece with me.
And these bits of cloth, which Linda came into contact with more than 3 decades ago, are still able to help people today.
I've had my back bad all week with my kidneys because I suffer with my back. And funny enough, I put a little bit of cloth on my back last night when I went to sleep. I felt much better this morning, whether it's my face, but I felt much better.
We recently caught up with Eileen and 2 of her other children, Kay and Barry, who shared some thoughts about their sister.
I remember an instance where I was asked to go and play with her in the garden, and reluctantly I went, because 8-year-old boys do not want to play with their 3-year-old sister. You know, they want to be out playing football with their mates. But looking back, I mean, it was, it's something to be proud of, you know.
While we're still suffering, people are still suffering, Linda's work will continue.
And as for Eileen Martel, the requests for pieces of Linda's things continue.
I'm cutting up blankets now. I've got with the last blanket. Cutting up now to send out, you know.
Like her divinely touched daughter, Eileen too has a place in her heart for those who suffer. And it is for this reason that she continues to share the wondrous gift of Linda's miraculous touch.